Why is it that I'm always eating tons of chocolate when I'm stressed? And why is it that I'm always stressed when I eat tons of chocolate? No matter who, everyone has at least one major perceived problems in their lives. Our problems are just an ordered list, and the entry at the top is our most important problem. Everyone has one of them, because even tiny ones can be the most important one. And the following chain of thought that I'm going to present works for pretty much every problem we might encounter in our life. If we generalize further and further, until all problems are pretty much the same or rely on the very same causes, we are at the goal. We will use eating problems as an example, as they are easy to understand and relatable to many people. But without further ado, let us dive into the illustrations that I have created. What we see here is an onion diagram, and the very outermost layer of this onion might be that we feel stressed. This is a direct symptom. We just feel stressed. We have no idea why, probably, but we feel stressed very often or even chronically stressed. But what might be the cause for it? Well, for some people that have problems with eating and overweight, joint pains might be the problem, might be the cause of the feeling stressed. Maybe they feel a certain discomfort when they have to move because their knees aren't made for their body weight, for example. Or in general, the eating of sweets and being in a constant surplus has created some inflammations in your body that now bothers you and stresses you to a degree. And the more chronic the condition is, the worse it gets over time, and the bigger it feels in our mind. Every suffering, every discomfort has a mental and a physical part. And in this sense, the mental part gets stronger and stronger. And the reason for the joint pains might be a high body weight, simply because our joints are not created to support a 3-digit body weight in most cases over a long period of time, or even worse. Nowadays, it is not uncommon that people weigh way above that. And that creates all kinds of problems in the entire body, simply because it has not been tested, evolutionarily speaking, and we simply are not prepared for such high body weights. It is very simple. And all kinds of metabolic diseases and even joint pains and other problems with inflammations might be the result. And the reason for the high body weight is, for example, binge eating or constant binge eating. If we eat a lot and do it quite often, then our body weight will naturally rise. Many people use binge eating as a coping mechanism for bad emotions, for example, and thus it is a compensation mechanism. We try to get rid of our bad emotions by compensating them with a stronger sensual input. And this is the only way most people know to deal with their bad emotions. They never learned anything else, and thus they engage in this harmful behavior over and over again, not knowing that there are alternatives that do not have such negative consequences. And the cause and reason for this compensation is obviously the negative emotions. If those negative emotions weren't there, there would be no reason and cause to engage in the detrimental kind of behavior. There would be no need to binge eat to cover the bad emotions because the bad emotions are not there. So what is the cause for the bad emotions? And for most people, it is repeated conditioning. They repeat certain kinds of immoral behaviors that result in feelings of remorse and stress, so that negative emotions are constantly reinforced in our minds. And when that happens, well, we might have a problem. If we do it long enough, our general mental inclination becomes negative. And then we have to constantly create a stronger positive impulse to fix those bad emotions that we create by our own behaviors. And in many cases, the fixing behavior creates even more negative emotions than it solves or masks. And the reason for this repeated conditioning is delusion. And delusion is the core problem that underlies everything, every problem that ever existed, that any human ever had. If we knew that our behavior was detrimental and only created suffering in the future for us, then we simply would not engage in it. This is very simple, but very hard to understand for many people. They simply do not see it. They do not know as it really is, as the Buddha would often phrase it. Okay, and here the entire chain of cause and effect in summary. We feel stressed because of joint pains, for example, or other inflammations or other metabolic diseases. And those are there because of the high body weight and the constant overconsumption. And that is there because of the binge eating. And the binge eating is there because we need to compensate for the negative emotions, which in turn rely on the repeated conditioning and our delusion of what brings happiness and what does not bring happiness. And this is very important to understand. And you can repeat a very similar chain reaction or chain of reasoning for every single problem that ever existed in any human. In the end, it all boils down to negative emotions, compensation, repeated conditioning, and delusion. Delusion is always at the core of any kind of problem. Okay, and this chain of reasoning is not limited to obesity or eating disorders, as I already mentioned. People who take drugs, or porn, or binge watch series, or binge play video games, and many other instant gratification related habits work based on the same principle. Our minds usually only know one way to deal with bad emotions, and that is replace them with something that feels a little bit better, or at least a little bit stronger. Some people are even addicted to directly negative kinds of behaviors that feel stronger than the other stuff that feels even worse. So they mask it with a detrimental behavior that they know is detrimental, but which is not as detrimental as the things that they try to hide. The problem with those things is that instant gratification is 100% correlated, aka causated, with future suffering. And this only adds to the problem. And when I was a bit less self-observant due to the meditation I do nowadays, I had a very addictive personality. Whenever something upset me, I immediately leaped out to some form of instant gratification to make the bad go away. However, that only led to a repeated cycle of negativity. Luckily, those things more or less stopped when I realized what I was doing due to all the meditation. Okay, but let us now come to the most important points. Most people engage in all kinds of harmful behaviors unknowingly. If they knew what they were doing, they wouldn't engage in that behavior. And the only way to deal with the negative emotions that they know is to create a stronger feeling of pleasure or even pain. It only matters that the feeling is stronger. And this often leads to future problems, or pretty much always leads to future problems. And to overcome this, we have to cultivate right understanding or wisdom, as the Buddha called it. And if we generalize far enough, most harmful behaviors happen out of delusion. If we knew that some pleasure right now only causes certain future sufferings, we would stop. But we don't know that on the level of gut feelings, thus we still engage in all kinds of harmful behaviors that are just coping for negative emotions that we feel, and this coping creates more negative emotions, so we are stuck in a vicious cycle. Okay, that is pretty much it for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video and found it helpful, please leave it a thumbs up so I know to produce more of this style of content in the future. However, if you feel like I missed something, also let me know in the comment section so that other people and I can benefit from your wisdom. And if you enjoy the content in general, feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel. But until then, I wish you a pleasant day and goodbye.